Welcome back to Living Grounded. You're here with Lila and Tim,
What?
and we had Easter coming up. Whoa!
Oh yeah.
We have an Easter service on Friday at 9 a.m. and one on Sunday at 9 a.m. And we're going to talk about two key moments where Jesus points to his death and his glory and his resurrection. And going towards that, we're going to answer 4 questions about Easter today.
Mm.
First one, simple. Where does Easter even come from?
Yeah, I remember a conversation with my auntie who's not a believer. She would always kind of press me on this and tell me, don't you know it's just a pagan festival that you kind of adopted and all this sort of stuff. So look, let's get into it. So firstly, the name Easter. Maybe people, some kind of anthropologists and historians and so on find some background in like a Saxon or German goddess.
Oh,
There you go.
could be.
Yep. Eostra or Ostara maybe. But to be honest, when you dig into this, it really seems to be more like coincidence than it does any concrete evidence of like a pagan connection to the actual concept of Easter. So the idea of particularly of the Son of God rising from the dead, so a resurrection that then leads to other people's resurrections, all this sort of stuff. Yeah, no, I'm not convinced. I don't think there's concrete evidence of that. To be honest, it's a very kind of English language centric kind of question. In Latin and Greek, the name for Easter is Pascha, which actually points to Easter's true origins, which is the natural evolution of the Passover. So New Covenant Christians seeing that Jesus' death and resurrection was the fulfillment of the Jewish Passover. And so when, hey, instead of having a yearly Passover festival, let's have a yearly Easter Pascha. Let's have a yearly Pascha festival. So instead of sacrificing a lamb for sins and so on, we celebrate Jesus' death and resurrection. That's the idea.
Is that where you would get the timing from? Is that the same time as Passover?
Yeah, essentially. Like, I think there's a funny little thing that's happened there. Like, so Jewish Passover does take place essentially around the same time. So you're talking about spring, but that's linked to the Hebrew calendar. We don't live under the Hebrew calendar. We live under, essentially a Roman form of calendar. And we celebrate Easter on the Sunday after the full moon of the true start of spring in the northern hemisphere. We call it the equinox and so on. So, and that isn't the 1st of March or something like that. We go spring is the 1st of March, but no, the true first day of spring is kind of around the 21st of March, and they've just said 21st.
Which year? It's not even spring now.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't make any sense. Even so, autumn for us. But it's the day when you get equal night and day is equal hours, essentially. So spring equinox. Now, this just helps you understand what essentially happened and makes just total sense, right? In the Roman Empire, there would have been a pagan festival for the spring equinox because those sort of cultures celebrated the movement of the moon and the stars and all this sort of stuff. Now, what's the most logical thing to do? People get excited. They go, oh, see, it's got its roots in pagan festivals. No, what it's got its roots in is the date of a pagan festival, because as the Roman Empire becomes Christian, what's the most natural thing to do? All right, we want to celebrate this Easter. We want to celebrate Pascha. We want to celebrate when Jesus died and was resurrected. When should we do it? Well, let's do it when there's a festival already. We'll take over the pagan festival date because we don't want to celebrate that anymore. Let's celebrate Jesus at this point. So essentially, that's the simple answer. How else do you pick a date? So it just all kind of comes together that it's around the same time as Passover, but it also would have essentially co-opted the pagan date and gone from that. Yeah.
Okay. Second question, but then what about the Easter eggs? Where does that come from?
Yeah. Do they do Easter eggs still in Germany?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, big thing.
Definitely.
What do you do? Real eggs or just chocolate?
Sometimes we would color real eggs, but
Yeah.
also tons of chocolate, good German Swiss chocolate, hide them outside. My Oma, she would sometimes bake a lamb and then hide that somewhere. That was like the big prize. Yeah,
Okay.
definitely do that.
Yeah. So look, uh, it seems to have German origins,
Mm.
somewhere around the Middle Ages. To be honest, we've kind of lost it. We don't really know. So could be that's just the reality that we don't know why a bunny, why we don't know why eggs. Could just be a good fun thing to do without a great amount of symbolism.
Mhm.
There's probably something in it from way back, but to be honest, I don't think anyone knows. Yeah.
Huh. Do you think Christians should participate in that, or
I think that's fine if you do. I think there is a problem. I mean, the Easter egg thing is so easy to take on because it's just an Easter egg. Like it's an egg. It's fun. It's got chocolate. Like how can you lose as a kid? We just need to be careful that that isn't the center of our Easter. I think this is pretty obvious, but I think when you talk to most kids, what do they say Easter means to them?
yeah?
It means chocolate and eggs, and maybe an Easter bunny. Yeah, that's something I think Christian parents want to wrestle with. How do we ensure that Jesus' death and resurrection remains the center of the period?
Mhm.
Yeah, without being too crazy dogmatic. You know, we we don't ban Easter eggs at our home. I probably don't do the whole Easter bunny thing. I think that's a bit like, what is
Not
that?
like bunnies.
No, I just what does it mean? What does it add? It does nothing. But yeah, certainly the Easter. Yeah, so,
Okay.
yeah.
Then we've got Lent. What is that? Should we as Christians participate in it? Do we do it at Village?
Yeah. So particularly if you've got Roman Catholic background or friends, family, and so on, you might have heard a bit more of Lent. It's not a massive thing in kind of the more Protestant churches and so on. So Lent is the 40 days leading up to Easter. So it's a period that you'd often fast or pray leading up in preparation for Easter. And look, I mean, there's something to this, isn't there? That the time we live in, it's very fast paced. It's very kind of living in the moment. It's always what's next. All right, what have I got to do next? Okay, what have I got to do next? And there is something good about living in the moment. Jesus says, don't worry about tomorrow. Today's got enough worries of its own. Essentially, going, hey, don't don't live in tomorrow's fears. But at the same time, that one of the problems with just living in the moment is that you don't ever kind of have this deep anticipation of something good that is to come.
Mm.
And I think people have experienced this. You usually experience it when you've got a holiday coming up, don't you? When you've got a holiday coming up, you're kind of like, oh, I want to be there now. You start thinking about or looking at the photos of where you're going, or you think through what am I going to eat when I'm there. So all this. So that's where Lent can actually be quite a helpful thing. It helps cast our mind beyond whatever thing is going on for us in the moment, whatever mundane stuff. It doesn't have to be bad stuff necessarily, but just whatever mundane things as well. It helps cast our mind to Jesus' death and resurrection. But I think that also points to some of the danger of doing Lent sometimes. In the end, Easter's a pretty man-made sort of thing. It was an excuse to celebrate Jesus' death and resurrection, and that's fine. That's wonderful.
Mhm.
But at the same time, you don't need a Good Friday and Easter Sunday to celebrate these things. The truth is, we should kind of live in Lent. It should be our normal life that we are constantly reflecting on, anticipating, being reminded of Jesus' death and resurrection. That should happen every Sunday when we gather together. It should happen daily as we open the scriptures and encourage one another as a Christian community. So, yeah, look, I guess to finish, you don't have to do Lent,
Mhm.
but you can. If it's helpful for you, if it helps you turn your mind to Jesus' death and resurrection, if it helps you experience and enjoy that more, that's not a bad thing at all. That's quite a good thing. If it leads you to what can sometimes happen, and I think is a little bit down the path of where the Roman Catholics land, of this enables us to twist God's arm, or if I do this well, then He'll be even more pleased with me. Be careful of some of that. Yeah. Have you done Lent? Is that something you would do?
I've probably done it, but I
Yeah.
think a lot of times more half-hearted because that's the
Mm.
thing to do in a way. So
It's a long time, 40 days.
yeah,
You know,
it's not just 1 week.
that's not a 1 week, so yeah. Anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
have you done it?
No, I don't. I find rightly or wrongly, yeah, I struggle with some of those things in terms of, I guess I want to, that my philosophy is to try and live in Lent, rather than, oh, I need this kind of 40-day period to psych me up to do this thing, and then I'll stop afterwards. That's more my approach. Now, whether I succeed in that or not is another question. But yeah.
Okay, then very important. Is the story of Easter true?
Yeah, and that's really what it comes down to, doesn't it? And look, I think when you come to this question, there are 4 questions within the question that need to get answered. Did Jesus live and die? Was there an empty tomb? Did the eyewitnesses truly experience a risen Jesus? And how can we be sure that they did? Essentially, how can we be sure of a few of those things? So, first of all, the easiest one is, did Jesus live, and did he die on a cross? And look, I think the suggestion is yes. I think in secular, non-Christian historians and so on, the answer is still yes. Okay, you begin with the gospel accounts. You might say that they're biased. You might say that they have an agenda. But all of them agree that Jesus died on a cross, and there's lots of people who agree with them as well. So the later Christian writers all kind of took it that Jesus died on a cross. You got guys like Clement and Polycarp and some of these guys. But then you've got non-Christians as well. You've got Josephus, you've got Tacitus. Listen, here's a quote from one of the fiercest critics of Christianity of our day. And he says, "It is hard today to understand just how offensive the idea of a crucified Messiah would have been to most first century Jews. Since no one would have made up the idea of a crucified Messiah, Jesus must really have existed, must really have raised messianic expectations, and must really have been crucified."
Wow.
Okay, so even one of the fiercest critics is not going to fight us on that point. Jesus really died on a cross, because it's just too crazy that you'd make that up. All right, so from there, was there an empty tomb? Now, all 4 gospel accounts report an empty tomb. Lots of people knew where Jesus was going to be buried. This wasn't like a hidden grave somewhere. They took, no one knows where he was actually buried. No. Everyone at the time knew where he was buried. They could have found it. It was a big tomb. Obviously, the stone that's rolled in front of it points to that. There were even guards that were put in front of it. We're told in one of the gospel accounts, Joseph of Arimathea, who was the wealthy man whose tomb it was, he was going to know where it was. Okay, this is. There's no doubt that they know. If you go beyond that point, you start to notice a couple of other things that lead you to go, well, this is a very strange thing if you're going to make up an empty tomb. First of all, we're told that the first witnesses are women. Now, if this is a hoax, that's a very strange thing to do, because women don't help your cause. They're not considered to be credible witnesses in the ancient world. They wouldn't stand up in a court of law. If you were going to make this up, if you were going to make up a hoax, you wouldn't choose women as your first witnesses to an empty tomb. You have to ask some other questions as well, like surely people would have checked later on. Okay, if they know where the tomb is, the disciples go around saying, in the kind of 6 or 8 weeks later, hey, Jesus is
He's alive.
He's risen. Well, what's the first thing a bunch of people are going to go do? Hey, let's go check it.
Yeah.
You know,
Let's see if he's really not in
let's
there.
see if he's really not there. Um, Now, early, hostile Jewish commentators think Christians stole the body. Okay, and maybe that would be your argument of going, sure, tomb was empty, but Christians stole the body. All right, well let's come back to that. We'll come back to that last, okay? But first of all, it's worth seeing that the early Christian witnesses, not just one, not just two, not just even four, but hundreds claimed to have had an extensive encounter with the risen Jesus. Lila's going to read 1 Corinthians 15 if you've never heard it before or if you're just not familiar with it. This is really worth listening to.
Now I make known to you, brethren, the gospel which I preached to you, which also you received, in which also you stand, by which also you are saved, if you hold fast the word which I preached to you, unless you believe in vain. For I delivered to you as of first importance what I also received, that Christ died for our sins according to the Scriptures, and that he was buried, and that he was raised on the third day according to the Scriptures, and that he appeared to save us, and then to the 12. After that he appeared to more than 500 brethren at one time, most of whom remain until now, but some have fallen asleep. And then he appeared to James, then to all the apostles. And last of all, as to one untimely born, he appeared to me also.
All right, so catch those little things, okay? He was died on the cross, is raised from the dead. Then he appeared to Peter, some of the other apostles. He appeared to 500 people at one time.
Wow.
Then to James and a bunch of others. Okay, so Paul is saying these things for the purpose of, and he'll go on to say, some of these have fallen asleep, but many are still alive. His point is, you can go and talk to them. Go and talk to the people who witnessed a risen Jesus, and it's not just 4 of them, it's hundreds of them. Go for your life. So that's the big thing you need to come to terms with, that hundreds of people witnessed Jesus as a raised, resurrection from the dead, raised man. Now, again, you're left with options with that, okay? One of the old ones that people used to say is, okay, maybe there's a hallucination, or today maybe we go, oh, could they have been on drugs? Now, you want to go down that path. The thing that doesn't work with that argument is that they all kind of say they saw the same thing. If people are all hallucinating at the same time, it's impossible that they're hallucinating the same thing. That's not a hallucination. They're seeing something. So, I don't think that one works. I think really lying is the best attack you can make. It's either they're lying or they truly saw a risen Christ. So, could they be lying? Could they have stolen the body? Is this kind of like a mass conspiracy that birthed a religion? And I think it's just worth seeing that if it is a lie, it's a lie from the beginning. So Christianity really is built on the resurrection. Paul will go on to say that if the resurrection isn't true, then Christians are to be pitied. They are wasting their time. Okay? But if it's a lie, my goodness, it is the most strangest of human conspiracy theories yet, because all the people who believed it, who believed that they saw Jesus risen, were willing to die for that lie. Now, that is something well worth coming to terms with. Personally, I can see people lying for the sake of gain. I mean, people do it all the time, don't they? I can see people lying for the sake of saving face. But once you start bringing torture and death, not just to yourself, but to people who you love, for the sake of your lies, for something you know not to be true. Okay, so, if you want to go down the lying path, you have to be willing to say the disciples who knew the tomb was empty because they'd stolen the body or someone else had stolen the body, who knew the testimony of seeing a risen Jesus wasn't true, was just a big, hey, let's all make this up. They, you have to say, they were willing to die and let other people be tortured and die for the sake of their lie.
Which most of the apostles were.
That's the common experience of most of these people who saw the risen Christ. Now, to that, for me, that takes far more faith to say that than it does to actually believe that they saw what they saw, a risen Christ. You know, there's a famous kind of contrast called the Watergate argument by someone who was actually involved in Watergate.
For the younger people, what was that again?
Yeah. So President Nixon, American president in kind of the 70s, he got real paranoid that he was about to lose power. It was kind of towards the end of Vietnam and so on. And what he did was he sent some people to go and plant spy equipment, hearing stuff and microphones and all this sort of stuff in the Democrats in the political opponents' hotel, in the Watergate hotel. But they got caught. The people who went got caught. Now, Chuck Colson, who was actually one of the Watergate 7, one of the people who got caught, he says, "I know the resurrection is a fact, and Watergate proved it to me." How? Because 12 men testified they had seen Jesus raised from the dead. Then they proclaimed that truth for 40 years, never once denying it. Everyone was beaten, tortured, stoned, and put in prison. They would not have endured that if it weren't true. Watergate embroiled 12 of the most powerful men in the world, and they couldn't keep alive for 3 weeks. You're telling me 12 apostles could keep alive for 40 years? Absolutely impossible. So, look, you need to. Everyone needs to make up their own mind on this. But where does that leave you? I think it is that the most likely option is that the apostles are telling the truth, is that the eyewitnesses are telling the truth, that Jesus actually was raised from the dead. And if that's true, well, there is a God. He is your creator. You owe your existence to him. Thankfully for you, he is kinder than you could imagine. He sent his son to die on a cross. He is more powerful than you could imagine. He raised his son from the dead, all so that you could be forgiven for not acknowledging him and treating him like God, and that you could enjoy spending eternity with him. Pretty good.
Amen.
Amen.
Yes. Feel free to also share this with someone who might wonder, what is Easter about? Why do Christians make such a big thing about it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
good to look into. Anything we should know with Easter services coming up?
No, I just hope that you're able to make it. Encourage you to make it to Friday and Sunday. It's great to kind of go through the two-part nature of the cross and then the resurrection. It's a thing to do as a church family, I think. Just hope to see you there.
Invite someone, and I think we're taking a break at Living Grounded for next week.
No Living Grounded next week. We might post up an old episode or something like that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, have a great Easter. Jesus is risen, and see you next time.
Ciao.